At show 522, it's kind of like the evergreen until the 28th, because on the 28th, May 28th, Strong Like Bamboo is it's a kind of like a big event for celebrating Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I mean, a big event, meaning it's interesting because we'll talk about some real things that are happening in the community. The Asian American Storytellers in Action, which is a group that I'm a part of, they're putting it on. They got some grants together. It's a free thing. It's at the Oakland Asian Cultural Center on the second floor there in Oakland's Chinatown. They're going to talk about stories of Asian America being discriminated against, about in an era of anti-Asian violence. You'll hear 5 great storytellers, including myself, modest storyteller I am, Robert and Nancy of Ethnotech, others featured, Alton Chung, say Linda Emoto, MJ Kang. There's different perspectives talking about Asian American stories, speaking out about it in a way that could be compelling, and then could encourage you to tell your story. And then they'll be breaking up into little storytelling pods there at the Cultural Center. Nancy and Bob of Ethnotech, they'll be there with their own stories. And it should be a fun, free event. It's from 2 to 5 at the Oakland Asian Cultural Center on May 28th. And hear my interview with Bob and Nancy of Ethnotech on episode 522. This is episode 523, and we got a lot to talk about. The things we should have talked about yesterday, but we didn't. We're going to talk about them today. There's a lot, actually. Chief among them, the biggest worry really is this debt ceiling idea. And they looked like they were going to meet, and they were going to have some kind of breakthrough. But no, the Republicans still want to be hypocritical, saying, "Oh, we want spending cuts linked to debt ceiling, any kind of rise in the debt ceiling." Of course, when it was a Republican administration, they just raised the debt ceiling limit, so they didn't have this problem. But for the Democrats, they want to play hardball and say, "Oh, you want to have a debt ceiling increase? Well, you got to make spending cuts." And of course, they're doing it in the most cruel way, looking at things that really hurt real Americans. So we're at an impasse. They've paused the talks, but I do want to read something. They did AP came out with a new poll saying that 2/3 of U.S. adults say they are highly concerned about how the national economy would be affected by the U.S. debt limit if it's not increased and the government defaults on its debts. And so they're 2/3 they're worried about it, but few say they really understand what this is all about. You see? So no one wants to pay attention. We rely on our representative government, and I think the Democrats are playing reasonable, but the Republicans are being held hostage by the extreme right that says, "Oh, we want to get these economic things we want to make cuts, deep cuts that are going to affect a lot of people." Oh, under the guise of, "Well, we're protecting our, this idea of the debt limit. We're not going to keep raising it. We're going to be responsible." They weren't responsible for Trump. They weren't responsible when they let his tax cuts affect revenues to the United States, raising the debt limit or increasing the debt. And they raised the debt limit for Trump, but not for the Democrats. So I think people need to see the hypocrisy of the Republicans in this, because the polls indicate, this AP poll says that 6 in 10 say they want any increase in the debt limit to be coupled with agreed upon terms for reducing the federal budget deficit, which sounds great, 6 and 10. But this is where the details come in. The Republicans want these deep cuts. No one's going to agree on that. The Democrats say, hey, we want to be responsible, but don't be hypocritical, Republicans. So, this whole thing really, it's standard phrase. Whole thing is a mess, the debt ceiling. But that's sort of the big domestic thing on the agenda today, the debt ceiling. And of course, there are other issues, and we're going to bring up our good friend Daniel Phil Gonzalez in a second. But we want to talk about Dianne Feinstein, Disney, DeSantis, stuff happening internationally, war. Are we going to have war? What's happening with that G7? I like to call on my dear friend, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, Professor Emeritus. That's the good kind. That means they have time to come on shows like this and talk about the real issues of the day. Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethics Studies, San Francisco State University, Asian American Studies. Welcome to the program again, Professor Dan.
Well, once again, it's a Friday, and thanks for having me, Emil. It's great to see you.
Yeah,
Great to hear you.
nice seeing you. Nice seeing you. And technology worked for us today. And so, let me change your position. I like it this way. I'm putting now.
Okay.
Now we're kind of. I figured out how to do this. Now we're both. But if you say something bad, I'll do this again.
What constitutes bad?
Well, if we disagree, I'll say, okay.
Because a lot of the criticisms we're going to have today deal with the unconstitutionality of a certain party's actions at the state and federal level.
Well, that's important. Okay, well then you're back up out of the penalty box.
Oh, okay.
All right.
I thought I short stick somebody there.
All right, we're going to talk about that in a second. Some of the things you're mentioning, but I do want to talk about the latest revelations with Dianne Feinstein, and I'm wondering myself if it's not the time to say it's so apparent. I mean, people have known stories about what's been going on with Dianne Feinstein's health for years. Yeah. And I knew there was going to be this drip of stories once she came back, and LA Times had some interview with her where it wasn't clear whether she misunderstood the question or, but it didn't look good. It didn't look like she was her old self. And I'm wondering, is it time that
actually she did look like she was her old self?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the thing is,
was accidental. That was kind of Freudian ageism.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to know if it's time. I'm going to keep on with my stand that because there's a lot of senators, including Republicans, who are mum and won't say anything, and they'll say it's up to her. And I do think it's up to her. And because the voters put her in, and if the voters don't take her out, then it's up to her to say, this is it, this is the time. And clearly she does not feel it's the time yet, although the maybe preponderance of evidence is out there to suggest that she should consider whether or not she can keep up with the demands of the position that she's in as Senator of California. So are we at that stage yet? I mean, I'm still holding on, barely, but I just hate it when I see these stories out there that, for people who are just like not paying that close attention, they say, oh yeah, there's no reason why she has to hang on. She should go. What say you, Professor Dan?
I've seen the way, even without sound, that she seems surprised, and it seems as though she is somewhat disoriented when she's on the floor.
Yeah.
And so, even without hearing her speak, there's clearly some cognitive erosion that's occurred. So the question is, how bad is it? Okay, it's not whether or not it exists. Clearly there's demonstration in her behavior.
Yeah.
Of problems, right? And so the question becomes, to what degree is her ability to do her job as a senator impaired. And honestly, I don't know if she is an appropriate judge of that. This
Well, her close friends apparently have all passed on, or her husband, Representative Ellen Tauscher, who is a close friend and ally. She's gone. She's she's passed on. The only one that news stories suggest is close enough to really have some kind of sway over her opinion is Nancy Pelosi's eldest daughter, who is like a family friend and is a caretaker. And if Nancy Pelosi's daughter's there, there's got to be some kind of hotline between Feinstein and Pelosi, and they've got to be talking about who Pelosi wants as well as Feinstein to succeed Feinstein.
and there is the rub. You
Yeah,
have hit on the underlying issue. It's clear that both Pelosi and Feinstein prefer Adam Schiff
yeah. The
as
impeachment
the
guy.
inheritor of that seat.
Yeah,
And that is not that flies against what Mr. Newsom stated several months ago,
right,
when people anticipated the possibility that DiFi would resign, or that she should at least consider that. And he said, if he were to appoint someone, he would appoint a black woman.
right.
And there are a couple of black women that might qualify from an experiential point of view in the ranks of the Democrats. But one of them, Karen Bass, has now taken on the role of mayor of Los Angeles. Extremely important, local quote unquote position, right? But LA is a huge place
Right.
with massive influence, not only within the state, but throughout the United States and perhaps even the world, right? Um, so then the other person happens to be Ms. Lee.
Yeah, Barbara Lee
And,
from
and
Oakland.
Ms. Lee is very progressive. There are times when she stood alone on war issues. For example, Desert Storm, right? And she took a lot of flack. I mean, I was worried that she might not be reelected,
Yeah.
but she has been reelected several times.
Oh, she wins by 90% easily
Yes,
in her
yes,
district.
so
Just
it's been 30 years
yeah,
since Desert Storm, and she had already been in office for a while. So if there's anybody that has consistent experience, it's certainly her. So she's highly qualified for this to hold a senatorial position, but she is not preferred by Pelosi, and at least it's been widely reported
yeah.
that
Well,
the preference is Schiff. And
yeah,
then there's a third person, though.
yeah.
Uh,
Katie
there's
Porter.
Congressman Porter,
Yeah,
Katie Porter, who also, although she's a short timer, shows a great deal of expertise, not only at the local level, but also in terms of international issues. She's outstanding. And I'm not saying that simply because she has not only the professional degrees, right, but she also was a professor.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, so she's good. That she's also good at raising money, as is Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff has a national name. Barbara Lee is only thrust there because of Gavin Newsom's promise that he would appoint a black woman, and it's important to have a black woman because presently the black woman who was in the Senate is now vice president, and I don't believe there are any black women
no,
in the Senate,
that's correct.
and so there's a tremendous void when you give a promotion to Kamala Harris, or when she gets a promotion by the public vote. So there is almost it doesn't have to be seen as an obligation, but certainly, Gavin Newsom, he, I did he paint himself into a corner by promising this because he thought at the time it would be good, or if it wasn't, if he didn't make a promise, then we wouldn't have this problem because Gavin Newsom and Dianne Feinstein also are very close. I mean, that's one of the things about the whole San Francisco Democratic politics. They're all part of the what was once the machine, and uh,
Yep.
I think that Newsom they're kind of paying for Newsom being honest, really, right?
Right.
It's
Right. Well, he clearly became more increasingly progressive,
yeah,
right, during his tenure as a mayor in San Francisco, and that went global when he said, whether you like it or not, people are going to be able to get married
yeah,
in same-sex marriages in San Francisco, and that at the time was a huge deal. That
yeah,
was seen on a national basis and international, as I said, as radical, a
yeah,
radical statement. And of course, now until the new resistance, right,
mm,
of the neo right and its extreme Christian nationalism, right? There's again an attack not only on same sex marriage, but there's an attack on all aspects of LGBTQ conditions in
yeah.
American society, and they're really severe.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, all right. So we're still in this impasse where
Oh yeah,
Dianne Feinstein isn't budging. She does, she shows up for most votes. She doesn't. I mean, she's absent for a few apparently since she's been back. But the logjam on the judges appointing Biden judges is sort of loosening up. But I just think we're going to see more and more calls for her to, well, not calls, but we're going to see stories that show she is not in a position to do her job 100%. And that, I know, it'll be the slow drip, 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 but at some point, she's going to have to make I'm still for she makes the call herself before
right.
something else happens. But what's going to happen first is going to be so 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 clear to everyone once all the things that have not been public are now in public that she not only is she fighting shingles, she also has these other debilitating things that she has not disclosed, like encephalitis and like this other kind of you know uh, disfiguring kind of thing that impacts her facial
Yeah, it's a muscular
right.
problem, face
So
muscle.
I mean, I think we don't want to pile on, and I think we, as San Franciscans, we want to give her the respect she deserves. But I'm hearing a lot of people. I mean, this is the cry for her to step down, starting to get louder.
Yeah, and I think even if we look away from or set aside the issue of an appointment by Gavin Newsom, if we set that aside and we just look at what the national picture looks like, uh, Biden's going to need all the help he can get, and it's going to have to be very active help. And ever since Pelosi stepped down from the speakership, and the Republicans won the seat essentially. The the kind of help that Biden needs really is in the Senate, and so it puts added pressure right on her to be able to react strongly and quickly
Mhm.
to issues that come up involving Biden's reelection campaign.
Yeah.
And other issues that arise. We have to take a look at her record. I look at her record and it's kind of spotty. She's not a real progressive.
She's no, she's not a progressive.
She's a moderate liberal. At best, and on many issues, she has taken actually moderately conservative positions.
Yeah, she's in the middle. She's in the
Yeah,
middle, and she used to be a little more liberal than she's been, but she's definitely a Democrat, and I think I here's the other thing. She also has seniority, so she has some power by being as old as she is. Because
Right.
you put someone new in there, and it will take some time before they have some power. Like when Boxer stepped down and Padilla was put in, he got the boost from Newsom to run or
Right.
to be the incumbent, and then he had to run again, and he still doesn't have the kind of power and respect, and he's just not as known. I mean, he's a senator from California, but if you were to ask people now who are the senators from California, they'll say Feinstein, but the other guy, they won't know.
Right.
Even Californians won't know.
No, that's true.
I
That's
mean,
true.
unfortunately, that's just. I mean, I like Padilla. Every time the Senate's in the public, in terms of like the Ketanji Brown Jackson hearings, he was out there. They're trying to put him out there, but frankly, he is not. He hasn't. I mean, like I said, you ask 10 random people in California, 20 random people in California, how many people would say who are the two senators?
Right.
Feinstein people would know, and they'd have trouble with Boxer's replacement. They might
Right.
even say Boxer. Oh no, she's gone. Oh yeah, there's that other guy. So where does that leave us? I mean, uh,
Well, it leaves us with somebody trying to influence DiFi. It means that Newsom has to put some pressure on and I can't see Newsom putting what I would call normally political pressure on either Pelosi or Feinstein
yeah,
because they're so powerful.
yeah, but this wouldn't be an issue if Gavin Newsom hadn't made a promise that he would appoint a black woman.
Yeah.
If he didn't try to grandstand and make the statement, I'm going to put a black woman in there, uh, then
Well, the grandstanding part is the degree of his statement, right? If
yeah,
he said, "I think careful consideration should be given
right,
to putting a black woman in," something like that. Okay, that's short of an outright statement that if there is an opening, definitely there's going to be a black woman in there.
right. But he didn't. He was definitive,
He was
and
definitive. Yeah, that's right. He
that's
was.
what's causing this problem. If he just was okay, let's look at it, then they would be free, and then Gavin Newsom would be free to say, "Yeah, I'll appoint Adam Schiff," and then everything would be fine. But he can't do that. He doesn't have that option anymore. He could do it and say, "I'm going to go against what I said." He could say that.
Well, he could make a deal with Barbara Lee. She
Oh,
she's not she is she's not hauling money,
yeah,
right? She's not taking in a whole lot of money. I mean, I did my bit, but
yeah.
that's small donations, and that's the way to go. So if she's not getting a significant amount of money, you got to look at the small donation base, and that's not a good sign.
All right. How about this? How about this? What if Barbara Lee falls on the sword and says,
Later, let's do something else.
"Yeah,
That's a possibility.
I mean, someone has to. I mean, we're at
Yeah,
an impasse because no one wants to. People who thought they were doing the right thing, Newsom, did the wrong thing. People who are trying to do the right thing, get Adam Schiff in there, know that they can't risk alienating the left, alienating progressives.
yeah. I don't know that Schiff is the right thing. I think he's too moderate as far as I'm concerned.
I do. I don't think he's the right thing, but I think from the perspective of Feinstein, that's the only reason why she's hanging in there. And the perspective of Pelosi, he's the right thing. I don't think he is either. But if in the end, the voters will know what the right thing is when they have three people to choose from: Barbara Lee, Newsom,
Katie Porter.
and Katie Porter. And even if Barbara Lee is, if she is an appointee by Newsom, could she win in a general if she can't raise the money?
Right.
So in some ways, maybe that if people just we hang in there, Feinstein is able to hang in there till the the deadline. No pun intended.
Yeah, so to speak. There
But
you go.
but
So
if
that's
she
that's two strikes, dude. You
But
get you use old and you use dead line.
if she hangs in there,
Hmm.
and then they say, okay, well, we have three, we have three candidates, and they're all going to run, and they run,
Yeah.
then Newsom is saved, Feinstein is saved, and then it's up to the voters. That's there could have been an easier way, and
Well, that's a long time away, man.
2024.
You know, that's
We
a
got to
long
get through.
time
We
away.
got to get 6 months, 7 months. I mean, her term is over. She goes through the end of her term, or
Yeah, her
maybe
term is January 70. No, yeah, 25. Yeah.
25. It's not 24.
No, there's an election, right?
Yeah, and
So
there's an
it's got to
election
be.
in November
I think it's
24.
6-year terms. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Okay, so the election is at 2024, and then she hangs in there till 25.
that's right.
But boy,
But
that's a long time.
there's a senator elect, right?
Yeah,
And,
that's a long time for her to hang in there, man.
uh,
She's
that's what I'm saying,
I
man.
mean, if you go by that scenario, she's got to hang in there.
Oh
And
man.
I don't
And,
know.
yeah, well, like I said, that's a long time, and the Democrats are going to need all of the help they can get. Biden's going to need all the help he can get.
In 2024.
Things are happening now that indicate that Trump might not be the nominee, uh,
Okay.
and then he's going to be really busy, and
Well,
his lawyers are going to be dropping out like crazy because the guy can't shut up. People are finally starting to understand that he's obsessive compulsive megalomaniac, and the only thing that makes him he's just egomaniacal, right? He's a sociopath,
yeah.
and sociopathic behavior, that's what you got to expect from him, and so
So
he keeps losing lawyers.
he's too busy protecting his name legally to run for president. Is really the case. But well,
Name, I don't know about protecting his name. I think he's protecting his whole existence,
yeah.
right?
Well, he's trying to keep from going to jail. That's for sure.
There it
Well,
is.
well, look, we're not. I guess DiFi is still there. She's still hanging in there. I thought maybe there'd be a way that Barbara Lee falls on the sword for the good of democracy, but I don't know. Progressives would say, "Why? Why do we have to fall on the sword?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Why doesn't Katie Porter or Adam Schiff? I mean, and
Because they're drawing money, man. They're
yeah,
getting a lot of support. They're drawing money. They're known factors in Congress, more so than Barbara Lee.
yeah. Well, I like Barbara Lee in
I do
Oakland,
too. I
and
mean, and I really respect her principled position on any variety of issues.
yeah. Well, she is, yeah, and that she's coming out strong on abortion, telling her abortion story whenever she can, because that is the hot button issue that keeps her front and center. But let's see. I mean, Adam Schiff has to. He's got to fight uh, McCarthy, who wants Schiff out of all the powerful positions. He wants to make Schiff into the Democratic Marjorie Taylor Greene. So yeah. So I don't know.
I
But
think you would look awful in drag. Is
yeah,
that what you're saying? Or yeah.
yeah. Well,
Anyway,
it is.
or is it Marjorie Taylor Greene that's in drag? I'm not sure
Yeah,
here.
I think she's in drag. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's in definitely. Well, she's definitely in. Well,
There's a difference between being in drag and being a drag.
yeah.
And
Well, that's true. That's true.
yeah.
All right.
So
All right. We're not going to solve the DiFi puzzle today, but more
no, but
facts.
we got close. We
Yeah.
got close. It comes down to either DiFi's decision or
Newsom.
Barbara Lee's decision.
Oh, wait. Newsom falls on his sword and says, I am sorry. I misspoke. I am not going to appoint a black person, a black woman. I'm going to appoint whomever
Yeah,
the Feinstein
I
wants.
don't think
And
he's going to
that,
do that. No,
why?
I,
Well,
I
that
don't
would
think he's
be
going to
the
do that.
answer. That would be the
Now that
answer.
if the two Senate positions are occupied by people who have staying power, right? And you've already put Padilla in question, right? Because people don't know who the hell he is.
Yeah.
And so when he comes up again, I mean, he's going to have to start, stroking heavy in 2024
Yeah.
as a supporter of Biden and the other senators, the
Yeah.
other Democratic senators. He's going to have to start stroking hard to get his brand out there,
Yeah.
to make a name for himself. And he's going to do it. He has to do it within the framework of the Democratic, if not progressive, at least the moderately liberal positions, and that's going to be difficult. We live in a special bubble here
Yeah.
in California. You know,
Well, all the Asians are in California. It's important, this position. It's really an Asian American um, issue because I think between Adam Schiff's in L.A., a lot of Asians down there, they know him. He's famous. Katie Porter's down there in L.A. Not so many people know Barbara Lee. She's in Oakland,
hmm
but this is an important spot or an important position for Asian Americans in this country because of our, you know, being so numerous here, and uh, this is a person who represents us. So it's important to talk about her future. But I think I I think it'll be up to Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom can solve this impasse by saying, I misspoke, and I'm not going to appoint a black woman. I'm,
well, I think
I'm
it would be how would that affect his potential presidency
yeah, people
candidacy for president?
yeah, people all over the country will say, "Wow, I'm black and you didn't go with a black woman? Oh, what kind of guy are you? Going against your word?" Yeah, it's not good for him. But I'm just saying if he wants to get around this impasse, and that's another way. It's another way. Because we don't want Barbara Lee falling on the sword. Feinstein should fall on the sword, but and maybe she'd fall
That
on
that
it on
ain't that
her
ain't
own.
gonna happen. That ain't gonna happen. I think inside her head, she's still looking at legacy,
Yeah,
and a lot of other people also are looking at legacy, and they Pelosi and
yeah.
Feinstein favor Schiff.
Well,
I think we beat this issue into the ground, man.
yeah.
So
It is too bad we didn't mention the one thing, sexism, which is when old senators, refuse to go. There's not a movement to try to race them out or push them out. And
yeah,
Diane,
yeah. I don't know that she's there's obviously there's going to be some misogyny there. Okay,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know that that's a major element in the push to get her out. I think it's almost pure politics. It's just a
Yeah.
power position, you know.
It's cover though. It's cover.
Yeah, yeah, for
It's
sure.
covered so people say, "Oh, we're not going to be misogynist, so we're not going to push Dianne Feinstein out." So that's why a lot of people are saying it's a hard decision. So people who don't have any courage just should clam up and don't say anything. In the meantime, if her aides can help her, she might be
Yeah,
able she might be able to last. I'm not.
yeah.
She might be able to last.
I
All
don't know.
right, so
All
let's
right,
go on
let's
to
move
the
on.
next one. Mr. DeSantis has a lot of issues, and this
well,
week, and
well,
next
pick
week
a couple.
he might be president. He might be, or not might be president. He might say, "I'm going to be the guy." He's saying, "I can beat Trump," and so uh, let's start with we can talk about Disney, how Disney's pulling out, but let's talk about the things earlier in the week that DeSantis did. He signed these education bills that
Yeah,
really gutted higher ed in Florida. Uh, you know,
and thus encouraging other Republican governors with red legislatures to follow suit.
yeah. I mean, I think it's ridiculous all the anti woke measures that he made law in Florida. As a professor, how do you feel about them? People, if you're a professor in Florida, I would imagine you'd want out. You'd want to like get out of there.
Yeah, if they can afford to leave, I think a lot of younger professors probably will leave.
Yeah.
If it's kind of a tweener thing, right? Um, you gotta. There are people who aren't that tied to telling history in an inclusive and accurate way, right? Because they're not involved in disciplines that touch on those issues, like the hard sciences, right?
Yeah.
So unless it involves in the hard sciences something to do with vaccines, and then ties into political issues and political positions, the majority of professors really only look at the issues from a social point of view, right? They're not really that steeped in it, and
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want to draw on anecdotal situations and generalize from them, but even at an institution like San Francisco State University that has a long and storied uh, reputation for not simply being progressive, but being radical to the left in moments of its history, and not just from a student perspective, but from the perspective of faculty
Yeah.
and even administration. Right? There are other institutions like SF State, but they're in the minority. Most institutions, most university institutions, are not as progressive or as radical as the right accuses them of being. And the closest example is UC Berkeley. Right? Everybody thinks that that's a radical campus. It is not. It is not a radical campus. The
Well,
students at times, and particularly PhD candidates, can be very progressive and some of them quite radical, but that is not the administration, and it's certainly not the UC regions.
yeah.
It-
Well,
you have to look at the governing institutions, the
so
administration, and the UC regions.
so when DeSantis says, "Oh, well, you want to be woke, go to UC Berkeley. We're not going to have that here in Florida," he's kind of going on a stereotype.
Absolutely. UC Berkeley, remember, was one of the first institutions, along with UC Davis, to challenge affirmative action.
Yeah.
Okay, and a friend of mine, I can't call her a friend anymore. I haven't been in contact with her in a long time, but she was actually she's a PhD, really brilliant writer, and she was hired to be the affirmative action officer for UC Berkeley, or actually for the system,
Mhm.
for the whole UC system. But she was based at Berkeley, and when she did a statewide appraisal of affirmative action for faculty and staff, she presented the truth. She presented the facts and said the UC system is embarrassingly lacking in diversity. And she wasn't supposed to do that. she she was
Yeah.
supposed to not come out publicly and make statements like that would embarrass the system, right? And so I think in less than 2 years, she was basically pressured to resign. And
Mm.
she hired, I remember her hiring Dale Minami, the well known Asian American uh, lawyer who's fought a lot of cases, constitutional issues in front of the Supreme Court, to sue the UC system. And she won. And of course, she got an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and all the rest of that stuff. So, people really didn't know how she won or how much money she got out of it, right?
Yeah.
But her siblings are both also PhDs. She's got an older brother and a younger sister that were also PhDs.
All right, but the thing is, she exposed the fact that uh, Cal, the system wide, was more conservative, but and yet the enduring stereotype is,
Yeah.
and the assumption is, oh, and DeSantis made comments, oh, you want woke, go to UC Berkeley, not here in Florida. So what you're saying is Florida, whatever DeSantis does, is probably going to suit some of those administrators just fine.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
and that DeSantis continues to use institutions as a way to build a national following as the anti-woke guy, because that is the big buzz phrase
Yeah. Yeah.
for Republicans to be anti-woke, but essentially anti-woke is not necessarily to be against racism. It is almost racist. to be
Almost.
to be
Wait. Why are you hedging on the use of the term racist?
well, because if you're anti woke, it just means that you're conservative, but not all conservatives are necessarily racist.
Okay, then we got to go to a list of what woke means to them. Not the definition of woke,
Yeah.
but what they decide they're going to ban.
Well,
Okay?
they definitely all right. They're not anti-racist, but they are anti-diversity,
Absolutely.
which you can make a case that means they're
He
anti-racism.
he came up with his own acronym for DEI,
Right.
right? And
Right.
and and so that's how far they've gone with this. When what happened to CRT? They don't have to use CRT anymore
Yeah.
because they
Critical
don't know
race.
how to they don't know how to they don't know how to explain that anyway.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you know, so critical race theory came out of law schools basically,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with CRT. All it is a critical assessment, right? It's a method. Okay, it's a method that looks at the legal system, looks at the legal history
Mm,
of the United States of America, and assesses whether or not, okay, it has elements of racial injustice and racism, right?
right.
Evident in legal precedents, and it's really obvious that there's ample legal precedent. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? When you go to any law school, if they're fair about looking at the history of of issues involving what used to be called racial minority groups, right? If they do any of that at all, uh, then it becomes abundantly clear, right, that there have been exclusions and even legal lynchings,
Yeah.
okay, of people of color throughout the history of the United States. And so it's ridiculous to say that there's no such thing as institutional racism. And the Republicans regularly say systemic racism does not exist.
Right.
Institutional racism does not exist. That's why they have to do that's why they have to do anti woke, because
Yeah.
anti woke gives them the cover,
Yeah.
okay, to be able to list specific books. I
Yeah.
mean, you got one parent, right, in a school district in one school can file a complaint, and that can result not only in a book being banned, but in the teacher who resists and wants to say it's improper to ban this book because there's nothing pornographic about it,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
they get fired.
yeah, definitely it's ruled by the minority, and it's astonishing that DeSantis is able to create this political platform on the backs of the public that really, needs a diverse public education given to them, and he's saying no, you're going to get less. And you were saying he's got his own phrase for DEI, which is DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And
Correct.
his phrase in response to that to deride DEI is it stands for discrimination,
Yes,
exclusion, and indoctrination. And
right.
that
That's right.
and that's sort of the impasse where we're at. I mean, he controls everything. He's got, you know, they've done stories in Miami. They've dug into, well, who's complaining about, any of this. Very few people complain. Very few complaints.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
and it's
are you
all
up on
there.
are you up on the Colorado Springs situation?
No, I haven't been following Colorado
Okay,
Springs.
well, that's pretty fresh. I mean, essentially, they ran an election, a local election, and many pro-Trumpers
Mm.
won seats on the school board,
Yeah,
and they got a majority of the school board. And now they've gone further than even what DeSantis has done in Florida, and teachers are leaving. Have been suspended, and they're planning on leaving. And the students and some of their families are now organizing and there's going to be a big clash. And I'm very interested in seeing what happens in Colorado
Oh
Springs.
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, Colorado Springs one matter. In Florida with DeSantis, he's got 5 school districts there, the largest in the country.
Where,
And
Jacksonville,
yeah, I mean, yeah, they're Tampa, Jacksonville, Miami. I mean,
Miami.
the 5 school. I mean, they are among the top 5 largest in the country. And then people see that what's going on there, and like you said, if they have a red state legislature, they say this is the model, this is where we're going, and he's going to use this as a steamroller for a DeSantis branded Republican Party based on these anti woke kind of things. And I just don't like the sound of it because basically when you talk about anti woke, the racism is one thing, but there's also the matter of free speech. When you start banning books, you start banning what teachers can say, what teachers can say in a classroom, academic freedom, all
Yeah,
free.
there's an interesting attack. I can't remember where this lawsuit was filed,
Mm.
but one of the elements of the complaint is that it violates the freedom to read, which is an interesting take
Freedom
on the
to
First
read,
Amendment. Yeah,
freedom to read,
the freedom to read.
freedom to read anything that is out
Relevant,
there.
whatever a person
Yeah.
feels is relevant. So if there is freedom to speak and there's freedom of press, there has to, if there's printed material, right?
Yeah.
What is it for?
Yeah. If
It's
you
to be
prevent
in
me
print.
from if you prevent me from getting at it and reading it, that's a restriction.
Yes,
Well,
it is. It's
well,
an interesting. I really see that as a creative approach, and it's a legitimate approach. It is
yeah.
an interference with what we would think are the fundamental elements of rights
Well,
protected under the Constitution
and
and its
that
amendments.
and that is basically what the main problem is with all of this anti-woke stuff, that it does run counter to the freedom, the First Amendment freedoms in the Constitution. And it does show DeSantis as the autocratic fascist. Really, I mean, these are the laws, these are the
Yep.
books, this is what you're going to read. We're not going to do anything that's going to be critical of America, because that's the basis. Nothing
Yeah.
critical of America has done no wrong. America, I mean, he's really, this is propagandizing history.
Yeah. Well, it's a complete contradiction of what the traditional meaning of conservatism,
Oh yeah,
either in political terms or social terms. It's
yeah,
a they don't want government. Traditional conservatism is all about individual rights and a restriction on government interference and government control.
yeah.
And what you have here is exactly the opposite. It's really obviously and exactly the opposite.
Well, this is why, when on the one hand they say we're small government, we are for, no restrictions. Oh, you can't read that. You can't do this. You can't do this in school. And it's all a way to placate a very small minority of right wing conservatives who see this as the way to preserve what?
Yeah.
Preserve the
Oh,
past.
it's the, yeah. There you go. It's not a preservation. It's a what was I going to say? There's a resurrection of sorts, right?
Yeah,
Kind of making fun of the Christian nationalists,
yeah,
but yeah, it's ridiculous, man. It's a reversion. It's a complete reversion to the past, and actually, it's an exaggerated reversion, but. You remember when we used to talk about this at Catholic school? I don't know, but it was about, hey, did you know that it's illegal, man? Like to do stuff that is not missionary position number one.
Oh, you mean
So
in
like oral sex is illegal. You know, and we said really, and so we went looking for and this is during the period when what is pornographic, right,
yeah.
was at issue,
This is
and that the
this is
whole notion of what is pornographic
yeah.
was big stuff for about 20 years. You
Yeah.
know?
So this is good Catholic high school boy discussion. I can see.
Yeah.
So, and what did you discover? And then the people who got
We
engaged
discovered
in
that
this,
it was true. It was illegal to do certain forms of sex.
yeah, that was the law. There were, sodomy
Well,
is illegal.
sodomy was obvious, right?
Yeah.
Sodomy is obvious, but we're
Oh,
talking about oral sex of any kind.
oh, you guys were really going into it. Yeah. Okay.
Well, remember what books were out at the time? I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, yeah, yeah. You
when
guys,
when the when the censors came out and they had their lists, right? And they had their movies and they had their books, and they started getting on J.D. Salinger's case,
oh yeah,
right,
for
with
Catcher
Catcher
in
in
the
the
Rye.
Rye.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we said, really? And we went down to the bookstore and started flash reading through Catcher in the Rye. And I
Nothing wrong
said,
with this.
there's nothing in here, man. And
Yeah.
they said, you can read that fast. I said, sure as hell can, man.
I was just looking for the good parts. There are no good
Yeah,
parts in here.
yeah. And the only thing I found was when he was in the elevator in the hotel, a pimp says, hey, you want a piece of tail tonight, kid? That
Oh
stuff.
wow, what is Holden Caulfield up to
Yes,
here?
right. This poor Catholic boy is going through a vexatious moral dilemma,
Well, no,
and
it's funny because we are seeing. I mean, it's pretty obvious, with DeSantis, banning books and just having publishers and writers expunge things that clearly, you see the things that he removes,
yeah,
and or that publishers are forced to remove, and it seems pretty innocuous, but
it's
it's
a threat. If there are threats to the morality of
yeah,
our children,
yeah,
okay, that's their thing. Now, the thing that cracks me up is they use pornography and they say it's pornographic, and then when you look at the damn book, there's nothing pornographic about it. What the Supreme Court decisions, right, all the way up to Paris versus Slayton Theory, in the '60s, and then of course the whole slew of San Francisco-based court cases, right?
yeah,
Because of what was going on Broadway. Carol Doda was just the beginning of all that, right?
no, yeah,
Into the '70s, the pornography requires that it be a human sexual act. There has to be a human sexual act involved. Okay, and that's the biggest single element. And I remember a great case. I can't remember. It came out of L.A. and it was in the early '70s. And it was a guy had a stitched banner on his Levi's jackets. You know how people used to put patches all over their
yeah,
Levi's, right? And it said "fuck the draft." Okay,
yeah, yeah.
that's a quote now. So don't be saying that I violated,
All right,
you
you could
know,
say F the
FTC.
draft.
And so he said "f the draft," and he got he got busted because he wore that jacket in an LA city hall, in the LA city hall, right? Because he was going to go either observe a trial or he got a citation for something. But anyway, he was there on legal business, and then he was accosted and arrested by the local cops, and they charged him with pornography.
Yeah,
And that case, check this out, went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States on appeal, man. Can you imagine the hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of dollars spent by Los Angeles, right? The
to
city of
defend.
Los Angeles to prosecute this guy, including prosecuting him all the way up to his appeal
So
to the
do they
Supreme
win? Who
Court.
won? Who won?
He won. He
Oh, he
won.
won.
And
Oh,
and and the case was a wonderful. The dicta was wonderful. Basically, the justice that was wrote the opinion that was expressed in the record, right, said, well, we have defined pornography as having to require a sexual act, okay, a human sexual act, and then how is it possible for a human being to have sex with the draft? I
well, yeah,
thought I thought that is one of the best dicta that I had ever heard, and that's why I remember it so well. But
well. All right. So, all right. Thank you for that legal scholarship, Professor Dan.
yeah, but it shows you where people are at and how abusive they are in the use of the law.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
That's
plenty
ridiculous.
abusive.
Right?
I mean, they're abusive now. They're abusive.
Yes,
They're
and it's
abusive
worse.
then,
It's worse now.
and it's
It's
all
worse now.
political. It's all political,
Absolutely.
and that's where we are with DeSantis. And now he gets in all sorts of problem because of the Disney thing. Disney's coming in. He's against anti woke companies, and now Disney's going to walk in 2,000 jobs, $1 billion project. Now, here's the thing:
Well, they
DeSantis,
hadn't actually shifted the jobs over there yet. The whole idea was that they were going to do this big project, build some new offices, and then they were going to shift 2,000 jobs.
yeah,
So Newsom says, well, those jobs are coming back. Nah, they never left. They haven't
yeah.
left yet.
But it's going to be jobs that cost Florida, and
That's right. That's right.
so
That's
here's
correct.
DeSantis going to Florida in Florida saying, "Look at what a wonderful anti-woke guy I am. I'm the only guy who can beat Trump. I should be president of the United States." No, 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 not so fast. I don't know. I just think
Tim
that.
Scott. Tim
But,
Scott's going to declare.
well, no, Tim
You
Scott
got a
has
black
declared.
Republican.
He has declared. He says, "Look,
From
no
a
one's in."
southern state.
He says, "No one's taking the Herman Cain spot. That's me. No
Yeah.
one. Who wants to be the other guy? You know,
You
they
know, I think he's Herman Cain was a real joke. I mean, that's like that was tragic.
nine
I mean,
nine nine nine
you
nine
know,
nine.
you
Actually,
know.
with 999, that's
Oh
a
man,
German thing, right?
one of the mean things that I used to say about him was even meaner than calling him an Uncle Tom.
Yeah,
And that was Watermelon Man. Is
yeah,
what
oh, yeah.
I used to play the theme song Watermelon Man by Herbie Hancock, man, whenever that guy opened his mouth. It
Nine
was
nine nine. Godfather's Pizza. That was
That's right.
He was gone. So yeah, he was the so Tim Scott's looking around saying that there's no Ben
No,
Carson,
Tim Scott's better than that. I
There's
mean,
no Herman
it's
Cain,
not,
there's no
it's just he's got a really weird position though. I mean,
he's got no way to win, is what
yeah,
he's got.
it's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way, man. I mean,
All right. All right. So look, so DeSantis, he's being talked. I mean, he's gonna declare next week.
yeah,
He's got Disney, which another contradiction because conservatives are supposed to be for the free market. They're supposed to be
that's
for
right.
industry. They're supposed to be for capitalism.
Supposed to support
And,
goodness.
and now he's the mouse. A talking mouse is too woke for Ron DeSantis. So
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I
think
don't think.
they ought to use Goofy every once in a while.
Yeah.
He's one of
Oh
my
yeah.
favorites.
Well, do you think that DeSantis gets a boost? Because the polls are not good. The polls say that Trump is at 43, DeSantis is 20, and everyone else is at 1 or 2%.
Sure.
That's going to give DeSantis a boost. Like, okay, now he's in. He's gonna really rival Trump, or do you think Disney and all the education stuff is going to make people think twice nationally and say, "Wow, we don't want this bozo in there."
Yeah, I hope that they go off on each other. Is what I want. I want those guys to get in an actual debate.
Oh, Trump and
And go,
DeSantis.
yeah, and DeSantis.
Boy,
And
that's really like how low can you go, right?
well, I hope. I
Yeah,
really want to see it. I mean, I'm
yeah,
just curious to see how that works.
yeah.
You know,
Well, okay,
because
let's I don't know. Ron, I don't.
Nikki Haley is starting to try and separate herself a little bit. She's trying to
She's
put a little bit of wedge in there
yeah, she's
between
still
her and Trump.
at 1% of
Yeah,
the vote. Pence
and
is at
and I,
2.
and I think it's going to stay there after she said that. Well, the 6th of January was not a beautiful day. You know,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
so.
think Nikki Haley's out for the exercise, and we all know that this is all. Who wants to be vice president?
uh,
Maybe,
yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, you have if
Yeah,
Trump.
you mean because a half Indian woman made it to vice presidency, that another half Indian woman?
Well, I think Donald Trump, if he doesn't have a running mate, and if he gets the Republican nomination, all these other guys are probably thinking, well, maybe a Trump Tim Scott ticket isn't so bad, or a Trump. Well, it's never going to be Trump DeSantis.
No.
Maybe a Trump Christie. I don't know.
Ew.
But I
Now,
mean, some of
Christie
the
has
stuff,
really almost basically burned the bridge, I think, with
yeah.
Trump.
So, and it's not Trump Pence. Trump Hutchinson might be. I mean, I don't know. If you're a Republican, the Republican Party, if they're going on this anti-woke thing, anti-Disney, anti-woke, I think they're going down the wrong path. And I don't know how the Republicans get out of this.
I
You know?
like it. I like it. Well, suicide is not beyond the
Yeah,
pale.
yeah. Well, I don't mind the
They have
Republic.
engaged in lemming-like behavior. You
Yeah,
know, the rush to the cliff is,
yeah.
what they're
I
doing.
don't I don't mind the Republicans imploding, but we do need a competitive party to go after the Democrats to keep the Democrats in line. And
Absolutely,
them honest.
absolutely. There has to be a balance
Yeah,
between true conservatism, right,
yeah, yeah,
and the liberalism,
yeah,
at least as practiced by the Democrats. There,
yeah.
there has to be a balance.
And right now, I don't know. There's a moderate coming forward after Trump and DeSantis. Um,
I think it's going to take another loss. They have to lose in 24, and then they're going to start considering, national candidates more carefully,
and then
presidential candidates more carefully.
and
But
then
it's going to have to be somebody younger. It's going to have to be somebody in their 40s, or 50s.
so like Nikki Haley, they're practicing. She's practicing for the next time. Asa Hutchinson,
Yeah,
Tim
no,
Scott.
I still think she's too brown for the Republican Party.
Well, how about Vivek Ramaswamy? He's getting a little attention.
He's too brown too.
I think he's too. I think he's too formulaic.
Oh
Myself,
yeah, he
I
is.
very formulaic. He's like, I know what the formula is here because I'm an efficient technologist. I know exactly
Yeah, it's
what to
true.
say, how to get the publicity. So I just trust him. All right, let's go back this week. Two things I want to talk about that I want to get your opinion. First, AI, the Chat GPT guy, went up before Congress and said, "Look, we need regulation. Something's
Yep,
wrong."
yep.
Uh, I I got scared about Chat GPT this week when I look
Use it.
a couple months ago. I said, "Give me." I was playing around. I said, "Give me a love letter," and there was a love. They did a love letter, and it was interesting. And there was a disclaimer: this shouldn't be used in a real instance. That was good. But then this week I said, "Give me a column as written by Emil Guillermo," and
Oh, that's
it
good.
did not wait. It spit out words like and there it was, a column.
Did it make sense?
Yeah, it made sense. It was
So,
about
well, what was the subject matter? I mean, you
it.
cover a lot of ground, man.
They
So,
came up with something about unity and about unity and coming together or something like that. And I just said, "Oh my God, it's not as funny as I would have made it. It's not as um, let's see, it didn't have the short, pithy wittiness that I think I bring to my columns, but it was a column, and it came, and I did it sort of out of a kind of
what
desperation
was the
where
subject matter? I mean, you can't just say write a column like Emil would write, but
I
and then
did. I said write a column, and in the style of Emil Guillermo. They
and
didn't
that
get
was it.
Yeah, and it just spit out stuff, and it
Okay, so
wasn't
what did it cover? What subject matter did it?
covered, like I said, the unity of America, and
Oh, okay, okay.
working together and getting past the polarization and that sort of thing. So it in some ways it was a very generic
Yeah,
kind
that's generic. It sounds like liberal claptrap is
yeah,
what we used to call it.
yeah, it's kind of generic, but the fact that it did it and the
Yeah,
fact
yeah,
that it didn't hesitate, there was
yeah,
no like
and
spinning
probably
wheel thinking.
citing the need for unity is
Yeah,
it's weak sauce,
it's
but at the
cliche.
same time,
Yeah.
it is not inconsistent with your basic set of principles.
Yeah, it was cliched and did not get the style, that would make it a compelling read. But the fact that it was spitting it out. Now, I mention this also because uh, there
It
have been
lacked humor. It lacked humor, is what you're
it lacked
saying.
humor. Yes, it was not as witty or funny as I am. So the The one thing that also AI, you know, should be taken to task for is it's become an issue in the writers' strike in
Hmm.
Hollywood
Yep. Yep.
because now if you can spit into AI, Chat GPT, and say, write me some jokes that would become a sitcom using a Filipino guy and something and his mixed race wife or something. Boom, and then that would be the first draft. Then they give it to not a room full of writers, they give it to one writer who then becomes the editor writer and makes up something for the studio. That's what they want to do. They want to like diminish the
Sure.
number of writers
You don't have to do the team effort.
and get rid of human beings and go all AI. I think we're going if we're now in the golden age, or at some point we're close to the golden age, or we're sort of on the downward side of the golden age. We're really sinking fast if we're going to rely on AI. And so I don't know. I think that's a problem with AI. And then that's just in terms of my fear of AI as a writer. But there are other fears of AI for non-professional writers. I mean, which is actually kind of good. If you say, "Give me boilerplate on this," boom, and they give you
Yeah.
boilerplate. Now you're a
Yeah.
lawyer, you know that boilerplate is used all the time,
Yep.
right? And you could tell that. I mean, I guess it's a time saver, but I'm fearful of AI. And I'm also fearful for the biggest abuse is misinformation, and you can't tell what's true, what's not true, right? They can clone things. They can clone your voice. They can clone your picture.
Yeah. Yep.
Should we regulate? Should we regulate it?
you know, on the
Yes.
on the bright side, there's a whole lot of programming on on the boob tube
Yeah.
on television that would really benefit from some AI treatment. I mean, some of my favorite shows, like Law and Order. They got three versions of Law and Order, right?
No.
And one of them is so poorly written. I kind of have to resign myself to watch an episode to the end, right?
Ah.
Because it's so. And I said, from a legal perspective, this thing's awful. This thing is written. Who's the legal consultant
Wait,
on,
wait.
on this thing?
AI is not going to improve that. If humans were doing that, AI is not going to improve it. Look, all right. So I said that I'm going to send you to the penalty box when we disagree. So there,
Okay.
we disagree there. You're you're the penalty.
I feel like, okay, I ate the wrong mushroom. Damn
I'm
it!
sorry. I'm sorry,
Damn
Dan.
it!
Didn't mean to do that to you, but I disagree with you on that. All
Okay,
right,
go ahead.
one last point. I'll let you. You can. I'll let you get back out of the. So how about Mr. Pham in Virginia, who allegedly took his baseball bat to the district office of Representative Jerry Connolly in Northern Virginia, started whacking things, injured two people, allegedly. They're out. Clearly, this wasn't a domestic terror threat, organized. He was one man with a mental health problem. But it's sad because he is being held without bond in a facility in Northern Virginia. A guy clearly needs help,
Yeah.
and I don't know if he's getting it. But he's been diagnosed as a schizophrenia with schizophrenic traits since a teen. He's in his 40s now, and it's good that we can talk about it because it exposed. I mean, this is where Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month happens, coincides with National Mental Health Awareness Month. And what does this say about the state of mental health for Asian Americans if a guy who clearly needs help, you know, does something, is alleged to have done something, and can't get the help he needs? He stays in the criminal justice system
Right.
instead of the mental health care system.
Well, part of it comes down to what state you're in. Okay,
Yeah.
literate, not state of mind, but
Yeah.
what geographic, jurisdiction you're
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
and then whether or not that state has the adequate facilities, okay,
Mm.
and willingness to care
Yeah.
for people. Now I'm going to go all the way back to the early '70s
Mm.
when the California legislature put a bill through that closed down the mental health facilities
Oh yeah.
for in California,
Yeah.
and the whole idea was we're going to put them in halfway houses and reintegrate them into society,
Yeah.
and that just didn't happen. The part of the reintegration was occurring with they funded a few halfway houses, but there was no real monitoring of the people who were residing in those halfway houses.
Yeah.
And I personally was attacked by a person in the church, okay,
Huh.
and injured in that attack by a person who was formerly a resident of a mental health institution in Northern California.
Yeah.
And it was a very strange situation. In a matter of months, I ended up being an intern at a local legal aid office,
Mm.
and I interned there for all 3 years of law school. And there was an increase in the number of people who clearly had mental health problems and that were being released after having been for years being treated in mental health facilities on Thorazine, right?
Yeah.
And I think you probably remember that. You were probably just
Yeah.
out of high school then,
Yeah.
but that
Well,
was in the news all the time.
well, what do we do, Dan? I mean, we.
We're not making the kind of investments that we should right off the bat. We have never made the investments in healthcare and mental health care.
Mm.
Uh, but we started moving in that direction with legal cases. People winning
Yeah.
lawsuits that forced local governments to come up with programs and projects. But then the economy started suffering from what people equated with taxation, right? With overtaxation, and the problem was that inflation, right? The inflationary spiral that began in '76
Mm.
and continued all the way to '81. So there was a 5-year period where, just as an example, home interest rates went from around 6 or 7% in '76 to 18 or 19% by
Wow.
1980.
Yeah, I
Okay,
remember that. I
it
remember.
was terrible.
Yeah.
The
Well, I
inflation rate.
mean,
And so
so
the attack was the government. We're spending too much money on government
yeah.
programs and
Well, see,
projects.
this is the thing. When people talk about, well, we're not going to raise the debt limit, we want spending cuts. Well, where are the spending cuts going to come from?
That's right.
Come from
Exactly.
like this kind of investment, you know.
Yep.
And then they complain, oh, about the homeless. So there's so many homeless.
Well, and then mass shootings occur,
Yeah.
right? And then they say we got to deal with the mental health, and then they cut it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Look at Abbott in Texas.
right.
He's a guy. He opens his mouth and he says, "What? It's mental health. It's not about the guns. Okay, it's mental health.
Yeah.
Okay." And then he cuts 200,000. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 200,000 out of a specific program. There was a mental health program, state
See,
funded.
this is the thing about they'd rather make the cut because it's easy to make the cut because who's going to complain?
That's right.
The mental health people, well, they are, but the people get cut, the patients, they ultimately do complain when they do actions outside that affect real people who say, well, what happened? Well, why do we have so many homeless? Why do we have so many, these erratic kind of actors out there? And we need to do something with the system so that we take care of these people and the lack of care.
We don't make the appropriate amount of investment. So what do we have? We have homelessness, which is connected. There's some overlap, right,
Yeah.
between mental health and homelessness. It's not that everybody who's homeless has a mental health problem, okay?
Right.
But there is an overlap.
Well, if you can't hold a job, if there's some erratic behavior that
Yeah,
makes you
that's right.
that makes you unemployable.
And there was an article, I think it's probably about 2 weeks now, about shelters, beds in shelters being unoccupied.
Yeah.
And so people want to know why. And there was some investigative journalism done. And what they find out is a lot of homeless people don't want to go to the shelters because they find them unsafe.
Right. Oh,
You
I
know?
believe that. I
Yeah,
believe
me
that.
too.
I mean, they've done a lot of surveys about not homeless shelters, but places like BART, because a lot of people find BART as a place to, make their residence,
Get a ride. That's
which
right.
makes it unsafe for people who want to use it as a means of transit or means of transportation. I don't know. We need to. This is why you elect people who are
That's
going to
right.
solve some problems. They got to be able to solve these problems, and they don't. And so I bring up Mr. Pham because it brings up this other issue. It's Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, coincides with National Mental Health Awareness,
Yeah.
and to see
You know,
Mr. Pham out there it was sad. It was sad, and
sure.
I
Well,
hope.
there's an internal problem among Asian Americans too.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. We don't want to talk about it.
that's right. And so a lot of people who could benefit from what scarce resources there are, for mental health treatment, right? Don't go, and then they end up committing acts like Mr. Pham.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, a lot of it I think has to be cultural and language, right? You got to have cultural and language appropriate services, have it to give people access.
sure, sure.
And I,
One of the best examples, I think, sadly, is domestic violence.
oh yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah. I mean, that's an issue that gets doesn't get the coverage it deserves. Uh,
unless there's a sensational murder, right?
and
But
yeah, it has to get to that point, unfortunately.
that's
And
right.
but it's a real problem. People get hurt. They get anyway. Look, we're not going to solve it. We got to just at least talk about it briefly so that people are aware of it and they say, well, what can be done? Well,
Got to allocate the resources,
yeah,
and and that means not only funding government programs, but it also means supporting nonprofit
yeah,
institutions that do the job well. Not all nonprofits involved in healthcare and mental health care do the job well.
yeah,
So there needs to be monitoring.
yeah,
But when you have people who believe in the small government ethic, that are unwilling to fund those programs, not only the programs themselves, but the monitoring of programs to make sure that, for example, residential homes,
see,
right?
that's the thing with small government. You advocate if you not you, Dan, but if one advocates small government, you are advocating big problems
Yeah,
because small government will mean big problems when you don't fund, when you don't invest. Now, people say, "Oh, it's not funding; it's investment." See, that's a kind of
right, right,
because we'll believe in something if we can all benefit. Meaning pharmaceutical companies benefit, people benefit,
right.
capitalism benefits. I mean, that's sort of the middle ground that we're looking for.
Well, investment, the using the term investment, right,
Yeah,
to describe government expenditures works uh, for infrastructure, right? It because people see it, right? So that big infrastructure bill got passed, and you're starting to see the construction now.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so the timing is good in terms of Democrats being able to point at that stuff, and even in red states, see, look at this guy was against this bill, right? But then he came out, and when we started doing the reconstruction project, he acted as though he was in on it, right?
yeah,
And so so that's what's happening with the Republicans. They get out there and they say, "Yeah, this great," and as though they had anything to do with the formulation of the bill and its passage. And in point of fact, they resisted it, voted against it themselves. And that's the level of attack that Democrats have to have. They can't just say we did this. They can point to the other guy and say he did not do this,
yeah.
okay, and make it clear. So the same is true of any politicians that that are supposed to be doing what's needed right, by our communities, in our communities, and
They
and
just,
so
yeah, they
we
just,
got to hold them all to account, not just across party lines. We also have to hold them to account within whatever party affiliation we have, right?
they just do enough to get reelected. That's the sad thing. That's
Yeah, and they go with the wind, right? Which way the prevailing wind is blowing is what they do in the minutes before, in the minutes, hours, and days, right
yeah,
before an election. I mean, uh, it's like I used to laugh at that in other countries, right? Because they would always put up these signs: your highway taxes at work,
yeah,
your water project, systems at work, and then you'd look at the sign where the sign was, and they would show this project, and I said, well, how far does this extend at the date, right, of after the election? Okay, so let's say it's California and it's November 6th or something like that, right? Yeah. And so the bill the bill either wins or doesn't win, but the question is, does the construction continue? And so you go out to the same spot where that sign used to be, and when
yeah.
they take the sign down, right, there's
Uh,
no continued project on it. Remember how long some of those freeway projects right
oh, well,
here,
look, yeah, look,
in 20 years, man, that Fremont project,
yeah.
right, where they had the bottleneck, coming off the freeway.
Your
God,
tax
it took 15,
dollars at
20 years.
work, yeah,
Yeah.
your
Oh,
tax
oh
dollars
God.
at work sometime when we get around to it. Well, I
Yes.
mean, look, that's a problem. Look, this bullet train they're trying to build in the Central Valley. I,
Right.
I hope it gets built before, then maybe if I die, I can have my funeral in L.A. instead of in Northern California. We're all taking the bullet train because, hey, Emil's dead and the bullet train has been built. It only took 30 years. He's
Yeah.
only like 90 something.
Yeah.
Okay. All
He
right.
wants he
Dan.
wants one last trip to Disneyland.
Yeah.
He said
Disney, the land of the woke.
That's
You
right. That's right. They too
So,
woke for me, man. You know.
Dan,
Why don't they just out with it and tell them that Minnie is trans?
the,
Uh, you know.
I'm thinking, they should come out and say, look, you know, undo the head, and underneath Minnie is a guy, underneath Mickey is a gal, and
Yeah, yeah.
and oh, that'll upset Ron
Yeah.
DeSantis.
Well, that's only cross dressing. That's not even in drag. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not that serious. Are they? Is that woke? Is that kind of behavior woke behavior?
That could be considered woke behavior by Ron DeSantis.
Oh, okay,
It could be. It could be.
okay, I got
So
it.
so Dan, I think we're going to end it here because it's a long weekend. Well, no, not the long weekend isn't here, but on Memorial Day, May 28th, Strong Like Bamboo, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. It's free at the Oakland Asian Cultural Center. I'm doing a 10-minute story, and I'm joined by about 4 other storytellers. And there's going to be some short films and a discussion, and you'll get a chance to break off into pods and tell your story. It's a free little event. Russell Jung, College of Ethnic Studies, former
Right.
chair.
Asian American Studies, former chair,
Former chair. He's going to
also co-founder of Stop Asian Hate.
Yes, Stop AAPI Hate. He's going to be a moderator of the panel. You should be there. You should come to the event and tell some stories or be a part. It's at the Oakland Asian Cultural Center, May 28th. It's
Yeah,
free.
that's kind of a nice. That's a nice lineup that
Yeah.
day, particularly with Robert and Nancy.
Yeah, Robert, Nancy, the Ethnotech people. So it's fun, and you can sign up at eventbrite.com to register. It's free, but you got to register. It's like voting. You got to register. Got to
Yeah,
register.
that's cool.
You want to register so that when you come in.
Are they going to sell our data? Are they going to? Is it
I
going to end up like TikTok and
I
you
don't
know,
know.
commies are going to come for us?
No. They're not going to do that. They're not going to.
They'll take control of my phone.
We want to make sure we have facial recognition, though.
That's
No.
right.
There's no
Right.
facial recognition.
Right. No,
So,
all I got to do if I don't want to be recognized is take my shades off, and
oh yeah, there's
my,
yeah,
eyes are too tight.
yeah.
So yeah,
I
can
know
just
that guy. I couldn't tell. I couldn't
yeah,
tell.
I could squint. I could squint tighter. Yeah,
He had
squint
big bug
tighter.
eyes. So Dan, I so let's we'll
That's a good date. May
Yeah,
28th.
May 28th, Sunday. So check it out. Everyone, you should check it out. Dan
2 to
and
5.
everyone else should check it out. And so we're going to land our plane here now.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
I want to thank you for being here. It's just not the same basketball without the Warriors, but
Yeah, that's right.
it's just, I mean, it's fun to see that. I guess I'm going to like the Nuggets, but Eric Spoelstra with the Heat playing tonight. He's a half Filipino coach. So
Yeah.
everyone, if you're looking for a team to root for, Miami's not bad. They're
Some of the
underdogs.
commentators are saying that Miami is better coached, which is quite a
True.
compliment.
It's true. Better coach than the Celtics. I think Miami has a chance. So let's see if it's Miami and Denver in the final. It could have been Golden State, but
Yeah, Lakers are getting licked, huh?
well, they're old and they're tired and they're I think I don't know if the Warriors could have handled Denver, although they have.
They
They
have they
have,
did during the regular season a
yeah,
couple of times.
they
Yeah.
have in the past, but everyone's got to get in line. And the stories about the Dubs the last couple of days, where they finally admit that the punch between Jordan Poole and Draymond Green
Had an
did
effect.
did
It had
did
a negative effect, yeah.
yeah, and of course it did. But we'd like to think, oh no, it didn't, but yes, it did. And
Nah.
now, yeah, it's all kind of up in the air as who goes, who stays. Stephen Curry stays, and Draymond looks like he stays, and Steve Kerr, but everyone else moving parts.
Yep.
And
Yep. Mr. Thompson is at risk.
yeah, I just hope they are able to find real decent players. They got to find. Here's the key: older, veteran players, better than younger. Unless you've got a generational star, unless you have someone who's going to come in and make an instant impact, and knowing that you got to think it in terms of you got a guy who's 27 who's been around the league, or 28 versus a guy who's 21. Who would you
Oh yeah.
rather have in your team?
Yeah. No, I
28.
agree.
I'm going to be ageist here. You got to go with older. Anyway, I mean, and
Yeah.
the
I agree.
yeah,
You need people with at least 4 or 5 years of real experience that have shown that have star quality. You
yeah.
need somebody else.
I mean, even what's his name with the Kings, Sacramento Kings. The star guard who was scoring all the points.
Yeah.
Number 5. He was not. I mean, he's like 6 years in the league, and he finally reached his potential this year.
Right. Right.
And that's why they're going to be dangerous next year. The Sacramento.
Yep. Yep. The Kings were good this year, man.
Yeah, they're going to be dangerous next year. Anyway,
All
all
right,
right,
man. Anyway.
yeah. Hey, listen. Hey, thanks a lot. See, I gave you equal status here now.
You did. You did.
But
And
one wrong thing, and back in the penalty box. Back in
okay,
the penalty box.
that's cool.
Back in the penalty. But
Hey, man, peace, man.
this isn't hockey. Okay. All right, Dan. There he goes. Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend, my cohort on Fridays. College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Asian American Studies, Professor Emeritus.
Emeritus.
Emeritus. That means when he's got to go, he's got to go. There he goes. Dan. It's always good to have Dan here on Fridays. We're here Monday through Friday. Yeah, Monday through Friday. Pop open the mic. 2:00 Pacific, live. We do it live so that we don't have to edit. We do it live so it's just out there. And it's the exercise of this free speech right. This Asian American micro talk show thing we do. Emil, Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. Thank you for being here. Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific. And I hope to see you again next week, right? I love to meditate, and that means meditation, loving kindness, always address the love toward yourself, but first, show it to others. That's the trick, right? Show it to others, and it comes back. It's like a boomerang. A lot of people using that metaphor, the boomerang. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Till next time, Emil Guillermo, Mahal Kita.